When episode 6 released, we got a lot of merch, including the acrylic merch. If you purchased V in the set, you'd get a background piece that outlines the future of the acrylic collectibles. It states, a deathly battle foretold of a warrior drone versus a ferocious sentinel. Collect all 3 acrylic stands for the complete Murder Drones battle mural. Episode 7 is out, so we know Uzi is in the set. Both V and Uzi got their acrylic stands after making a sacrifice, meaning that N is the only remaining character to make a sacrifice and get an acrylic stand. The thing is, he doesn't look anything like we've seen before. The noticeable difference is a third wing. This leads us to the Amalgamation Theory. At the beginning of episode 8, N is alone and will make his way to Cabin Fever Labs, believing he can still save V since he failed to save Uzi, or to acquire V's assistance in saving Uzi, as she is far more within reach than Uzi currently appears to be. I mean, she literally gets pulled down to the abyss, which supposedly goes to the center of the planet, so yeah, V's a little closer. Anyway, when N makes it to V, he'll see what's left of her. The teaser for episode 7 showed she put up quite a fight, killing 2 sentinels, one to the left and one to the right. Quick side note, the trail of oil seen in the teaser was there before the end of episode 6. It was actually part of Doll's trap where she used a gift to pretend like she was boot looped. So I can't say the oil belongs to V. However, what probably happened is that V was ripped apart by the sentinels, like the other disassembly drones. The sentinels most likely ate enough of her that she wasn't able to repair herself. However, the sentinels have shown themselves to be incapable of getting to the core of the disassembly drones, or maybe they're designed to avoid them. It's also entirely possible that the core repairs itself after being attacked, just like Jay's did in episode 2, when her core reformed after being destroyed by Uzi's railgun. As we saw with other disassembly drones and Nori, it is possible to exist as just the core. It's likely that V is in this state with Elder Lich abilities, but hasn't had the time to gather the needed materials to go full Elder Lich as Jay did in episode 2. What I'm proposing is that V will latch onto N, using what's left of her own body as spare parts to create an array of limbs for N. Basically, I'm saying V's gonna upgrade N's fighting capabilities by merging with him. And suddenly, all the chainsaw memes of N from episode 2 just got that much better. This also complements N and V's current relationship, as the two deeply care for each other, and throughout the show have been metaphorically attached to the hip. But they aren't romantically involved, and at the end of episode 6, V accepts Uzi, so for her to act as the guardian angel to both N and Uzi would be quite fitting. But it's also possible that V and N, literally attached, could create a more romantic relationship for the purpose of adding conflict between Uzi and V while remaining friendly with each other. Jay will most likely contradict Uzi in the same way V did throughout season 1, so all the character roles seen in the show can be filled, meaning that Jay doesn't have to be offed the second they get the chance. It's also possible that N doesn't become an amalgamation, but breaks the restrictions of his solver because he's no longer under Sin's administration, and gains new abilities to tackle future foes, such as mutations giving him access to Eldritchian limbs. As for V in this scenario, she's probably alive, but like Uzi and N, she'll pay the price for her sacrifice. Most likely, she'll never be the same as before, whether it's physically or mentally. As I've stated in previous videos, I think the 3 main characters, all of whom have made a sacrifice or will make a sacrifice, will change physically and maybe even mentally. But they will not die, as it is unlikely given how resilient they are. So, just a quick side note, in episode 7, near the end, Jay gets a little message on her eye indicating that she remembers the events of episode 1, despite being a clone. So, clones don't work the way you'd think. They're not a copy. Well, they are, but not in the way you'd think. The bodies are copies. They're basically empty husks that remained docile or under Sin's control until a consciousness is downloaded into them. We actually covered this in the Uzi clone theory video. Basically, the disassembly drones are immortal, as once they die, they get backed up into the next body. That's what Sin's talking about all the time when she says, "Your backups will forgive me." She's referring to them when they're in their new bodies. So, just something to think about. It could just be memories, but then again, memories will make the drone in this case because they're identical. So when you download the memories into the next drone, they're identical in the sense that it's basically continuing on to be the next person. It's really becomes this philosophical question of, does this apply? Are they really the same person, or do they just have the memories of that person? So if you want to dig into it, you can, but it's gonna be the same. So if N were to die, he would just wake up in another body, and whether that's the same N, yeah, we can have this philosophical discussion, but it doesn't matter because he'll think he's the same one regardless, and will do the same thing regardless. So, and while many may question whether or not V and N can be backed up in this sense because they're under Uzi's administration, it seems like Sin contradicts that idea by saying,
"Don't worry, your backups will forgive me."
Anyway, let's put a pin in that and continue. The most likely changes are as follows. Assuming the amalgamation isn't happening, V will become the more traditional Elder Lich and will have Eldritchian limbs, and Uzi, regardless, will probably have greater control of her powers and abilities. I also want to add that it's very possible that Uzi turns into a disassembly drone rather than remaining as a worker drone, which most have predicted throughout the series. We can also modify the original theory so that V latches on or merges with Uzi to give her that body later on in the story, assuming that she'd be able to jump from host to host. Before we end the video, I wanted to talk about an outcome involving my previous theory, where Uzi becomes the host, the absolute solver. You know, the show ending hinges on what happens to Sin video. Link in the description, by the way. And link in the description for any other videos I mentioned in this video. But in this scenario, V could come back under the traditional means of an Elder Lich, especially if she can't come back normally. But if the Absolute Solver took Uzi as a host, and since Uzi is the admin for both N and V, then it's practically guaranteed that she would come back. However, it should be mentioned that the Absolute Solver wouldn't have vast amounts of resources it built up under Sin's administration, and would need to exploit the few resources it has in the circumstance to make up for it, aka V and N. So both may be forced into new forms and then used to commit unspeakable acts. And that marks the end of this video. Feel free to leave any comments down below, whether it's to debate me, ask a question, or anything else following YouTube guidelines. Alright, see you in the next one.